We've got full theatrics now attendant to the debt ceiling raise debate. Our very own Calamity Jan Schakowsky.
Calamity Jan.
Calamity
I like
Jan
that.
Schakowsky. She and some of her mates had a little press avail yesterday where she introduced us to, did Jan, introduced us to Janet, quote unquote.
Janet.
Her name is Janet, and she called my office in tears. She was so afraid. She is 64 years old. Her income is $1,200 a month. She has chronic mental illness. She cannot work. She would like to work, but she cannot. And she is so afraid that if they do what they're going to do, that she cannot pay the rent. She cannot pay for any food. She can't pay for the medication that she needs. These tough guys who don't want to negotiate, this is the hostage that they want to take. And there are millions of Janets all over the world.
Had I been at the presser, my question would have been, Representative Schakowsky, is that 64-year-old with chronic mental illness named Janet, is that really you? I love this tack.
It's cold-blooded, man.
I love this tack that they're taking. AOC said the same thing. Kevin McCarthy won't negotiate with us. Well, why does he have to negotiate with you? They passed a debt ceiling raise bill. They're the only chamber to do it. And McCarthy has been pleading with the president to negotiate with him, and they've had several meetings. So why does he have to come back and negotiate with AOC and Jan Schakowsky? And that's a hostage situation. They voted their shares and they passed the package they passed. They passed. Your buddy Schumer in the Senate could do the same thing, and then they'd go talk to the big guy and see if they can strike a deal. What I don't understand how this is so complicated for them. But
it is
the wonderful theatrics, though.
Yeah, it's theatrics. I got to think it's theatrics, and the president is basically he's in a lose-lose situation because the power of the purse strings, of course, is in the House, and he has to deal with them at some point.
Well,
he has to.
Well, the other thing about so I'll be serious for a minute. The woman that she's talking about, I'll take it at face value. The woman she's talking about that has mental health issues and she only makes $12,000 a year and so forth. The government doesn't cease to exist if you pass the debt ceiling deadline. They're still taking in billions of dollars in revenue. So you would be compelled to only spend what you take in for as long as it takes to strike a deal, a more global deal, such as the one that the House Republicans passed. The idea that everything just goes to zero at midnight is a lie.
But, correct me if I'm wrong because I'm no expert on government finance, but if there are spending cuts associated with this, then that will mean that Joe Biden and the other Democrats will not be able to go to as many ribbon cuttings next year as they would like to go to.
Well,
because they don't have the money. Is that part of this?
Yeah, that's about the sum total of it, frankly. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Bret Baier. Of course, he's the host of Fox News' Special Report, 5 p.m. Chicago time during the week. #1 best-selling author of To Rescue the Republic, Ulysses S. Grant, The Fragile Union, and The Crisis of 1876. Bret, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning.
So on the debt ceiling melodrama, do you sense or know from the conversations you have that there is give from the White House coming on the spending side and also, importantly, the work requirements for welfare piece?
They're hung up, the last part. But they're very close, and I think they're going to get a handshake deal either today or tomorrow.
Oh, wow, okay.
They have to in order to be able to logistically do it. There are now new rules where a bill has to be on the floor or in consideration for 72 hours, and the Senate has its own stipulations as well. Just back to your previous conversation, you're right. The president didn't negotiate for 97 days, and the House did what it did. It passed this bill. The Senate has not. And why? Because he cannot. He doesn't have the votes to pass a bill on their own. And so you're right. The drama is quite something to look at. Number one, because the House did its job. And number two, because what they're talking about is taking spending back not to the 1950s, to last year numbers. And Washington, when you are cutting spending, you're not really cutting spending. You're cutting the increases to spending. They call that cutting spending, but it's really just cutting the increases over time. So they're trying to roll it back 1 year. They're trying to get some work requirements and ideally permitting for energy projects, but it may be a long shot in this negotiation.
See, but Bret, we can't go back to the bad old days of 2022 when Biden was in the White House and Democrats had control of the Senate. We just can't do that.
Yeah. So that's what's lost in all of these hysterics is that, these are Democrat numbers actually from last year. So, it's not like it's going back to the dark ages or to your point that it stops and goes to zero and the government fails to operate. It's not like that. And I think that the White House is going to succumb to some of this, and they're going to have to eat it on their progressive side. I think that's what's going to happen because the Republicans did what they had to do, which was get the votes to pass the bill.
And and not to mention, despite the protestations about the polling across the political spectrum shows that the Republican position of spending reduction or slowing the growth of spending, as you more properly said, in order to raise the debt ceiling is something that is supported by almost a majority of Democrats.
Yeah, and because people understand that we as a country do some really stupid things with money, and at $32 trillion in debt, eventually that comes home. Everybody deals with things at their kitchen table. They know they can't be spending astronomically and never have a payoff, and that's what's happening in the government.
With respect to the work requirements, so, how do you split the difference there? There either is going to be a work requirement for a single able-bodied people or there isn't.
I don't know what the language looks like. I think they're trying to stiffen, some of the language so that they're, I don't know if it's going to be encouraging work requirement. There's not going to be a requirement then. That's where they're hung up. Republicans really want it. Democrats are pretty firm on that. I think that's what has taken so long. But as far as the numbers and the capping and all of that, they pretty much reached a consensus on that.
All right, I want to get to the presidential contest on the Republican side with the entrance of both Senator Tim Scott and Governor Ron DeSantis this week. And here, Donald Trump welcomed Tim Scott into the race. Of course he did. I'll let you comment on that in a second. But here is one of the ways that Donald Trump welcomed Ron DeSantis into the race. Take a listen.
2016, President Trump defeats the liberals and heads to Washington to drain the swamp. But swamp creature Ron DeSantis is about to start his third term in Congress, and he's already voted repeatedly to cut Social Security and Medicare. 2017, Trump passes huge tax cuts for nearly everyone. And Ron DeSantis, he's pushing a bill that would swap those tax cuts for a new 23% national sales tax, making families pay more. 2018, Trump is building the wall, securing the border, fighting the invasion, while Ron DeSantis is voting against funding for Trump's wall. In Washington, one was a leader and one let us down. Even DeSantis admitted there are big differences between him and Trump.
Obviously there is, because I voted contrary to him in the Congress.
It is obvious, Ron. President Trump is the only one ready on day one to deliver for us again. Make America.
Setting aside some of the questionable accusations in the ad, actually very misleading. But the question is Ron DeSantis willing to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump? Because Donald Trump is willing to go right between the eyes of Ron DeSantis.
I think you're going to start to see that. I think he was waiting until getting in the race. I think Team DeSantis Twitter page put up a compilation of Donald Trump as president saying, I have to shut the country down. exponentially, saying it over 2 minutes time, a million different ways. I'm shutting the country down. It was the right thing to do.
Right.
We got to lock people up, all this stuff. So when, Trump says that for some reason he says the Florida governor was the shutdown governor during COVID, it's exactly the opposite. And so you have to kind of fact check those claims. It's just worth pointing out that the Trump PAC, Make America Great Again, LLC, has spent more money on Ron DeSantis' head than it spent in all of 2022 supporting Republican candidates around the country already. And so that is obviously where they see the biggest threat, and they're putting the most money.
And with respect to Tim Scott, he's got Larry Ellison behind him. He's got significant funds. He is a likable guy. Conservatives who know him like him. And what exactly he'll do. He seems like less of a guy who's going to get into a barroom brawl than maybe Ron DeSantis. But that could open a third lane if those two are engaged in an extended food fight. And I just wonder how DeSantis' world has to navigate that, because if you have a viable third candidate in this contest for the nomination, that really makes it difficult for DeSantis given where Trump starts.
Definitely. You're right. And this is how Trump won in 2015, 2016, is that Marco Rubio spent $30 million on Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush spent $40 million on Marco Rubio. Everybody was going after each other, and then Donald Trump hit the gap and never turned back. And, if Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump go after each other and spend a lot of money on each other, there potentially is another lane for nice guy, humble, get it done, bring the country together. I mean, it is possible. And I think that's where Tim Scott, their headspace is. I think that Nikki Haley is trying to get that too. So there will be one alternative to the former president, and that's what they're battling for now. Our first debate is in August, and we'll see who's on that stage.
Yeah, right around the corner. And also, too, I mean, who knows, catch fire the way that Trump did. I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy is another one that has to be in the conversation because he is super sharp. He is speaking with moral clarity on a range of issues. He is taking positions that are provocative on issues like raising the voting age to 25 that get people talking. Whether you agree or disagree, he's getting people talking. He's getting notoriety. And so, somebody like him representing a major generational shift in political leadership, too, who knows what kind of impact he could have, a la like a Mayor Pete.
Yeah. Now, those people have to make some headway quickly. They've got to first qualify for a debate stage, and secondly, they need to make a lot of headway quickly, because by the time you get to actual voting in the new year, they'll have to be in position. He has moved from like 1% to 4%. Ramaswamy has. I think that the people like Asa Hutchinson and others, the North Dakota governor is getting in the race June 7th. People, it's just, I don't know. There's like a free-for-all getting in the race. Chris Christie's going to get in the race, apparently. And so the more people are in there for the longer period of time, the better position the former president is to take the morality of the vote.
Well, and the other thing right now, and I know this could change, it's a snapshot in time, but right now, Trump is also undermining the main argument that DeSantis has been making, which is that I can beat Joe Biden and Donald Trump can't, the electability argument. We need to start winning again. But the polling, the Harvard-Harris poll, for example, both nationally and in swing states like in the Rust Belt, has Trump outperforming Ron DeSantis against Joe Biden at present.
That's right. And so that argument is tougher to make. If it's actually the Real Clear Politics recent poll has both DeSantis and Trump beating Biden by a couple of points. So it's about the same. You're right. That is a big deal. Electability, that's going to be a big conversation for Republicans. I think the president is pretty weak now. If you look at the economic numbers, you look at approval across the board. Independents are down to 29 in some of these polls. That's untenable for re-election unless they run against the former president as extremists and they fire up people who just don't want Donald Trump to be president again.
This just represents my idle musings, but do you believe there's any possibility, maybe even something afoot, that Joe Biden ducks out in the 11th hour and a deal is cut to not give anybody any time to do anything other than Gavin Newsom?
It's very possible, but if that happens, what are we saying about Kamala Harris? I mean, is the Democratic Party just going to turn their back on their first woman of color vice president? I'm not sure, and that's a tough issue for the party. But I agree with you that is talked about in Washington that they say at the 11th hour, you know what? No, he's not going to do it.
He is Bret Baier, the host of Fox News Special Report, 5 p.m. weekdays, #1 best-selling author of To Rescue the Republic, Ulysses S. Grant, The Fragile Union, and The Crisis of 1876. Bret, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Have a good one.
You too, and he joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. Your business and your money are in good hands with Signature Bank. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
Hi, I'm Dan Migatz, co-owner and CFO of AM Woodland Outdoor Design in Mundelein, and a new customer of Signature Bank. We specialize in the creative design and construction of outdoor living spaces, providing our residential and commercial customers first-in-class landscaping services. Our company was founded as a one-man operation and today has grown into a multifaceted, one-stop shop for outdoor and indoor design and contracting needs. Signature Bank was there to provide the capital needed to grow our expansion efforts. We wanted to work with a bank that understands our business and is relationship-focused. Signature Bank is what a relationship bank is all about. We're excited to continue our partnership for many years to come.
Signature Bank helps local businesses succeed. Let Signature Bank turn your business vision into reality. Visit signaturebank.bank. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. It's May, and that means it's time for Memorial Day savings at Wilkins Mazda in Elmhurst. Memorial Day weekend upon us. This is Dan Proft. If you're looking for a new or pre-owned Mazda, you need to visit